Hey guys, it's Diana. Welcome back to the Mad Chatter podcast. Today I'm going to be going over one of the most frustrating and mysterious cases I have ever encountered. It is the case of the Yuba County Five, the five young men who had a great evening and then took a wrong turn, went up a mountain, and then walked into the freezing cold wilderness and froze to death. And to this day, nobody knows why. But I have been jumping down rabbit hole after rabbit hole ever since I have found out about this case, and I have uncovered a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to try to get it all out to you guys, everything that I have learned, from the facts to the rumors to the theories to my theories to everything. And I apologize in advance if I'm a little scattered or if I jump around a little bit or if I don't get every fact right. I'm going to do my best and get it all out to you guys. All right, so here we go. I do want to preface this video by saying that this is not meant to be a documentary or, some crazy laid out deep dive that has like bullet points and all that other stuff or images that go along with it, because it's not. So consider me like your bestie sitting at the kitchen table with you. We're drinking coffee and I'm telling you about a case, okay? Also, everything I say is alleged, and I have gathered all this information from public records. I did my own research and form my own opinions based on that research. So, just take everything I say with that in mind. And okay, let's go. Okay, first, let me introduce you to the Yuba County Five, affectionately called by their families as the Boys. They were a group of five best friends who met at the Gateway Project House, and that was a place for people that had intellectual disabilities of some form to go. And, just as like a place to hang out and stuff. And they had programs there, and the boys met there and they actually played for the Gateway Gators, which was their basketball team there. And like I said, they were a group of five best friends. So we have Gary Mathias. He was 25 years old. He was a diagnosed schizophrenic. He used to be in the Army, but he had a bit of a violent past before he got diagnosed. And so he was discharged on like a psychiatric discharge from the Army for acting violent. And once he got on his medication, once he was finally diagnosed, he was a completely different person. He was a model citizen and he was great. Then we have Jack Madruga. He was 30 years old. He was the driver and the owner of the car that they all got out of and walked into the woods, which was a 1969 Mercury Montego, which is, a nice big muscle car. Lower to the ground, and this was Jack's baby. He loved this car, so he babied it. He didn't let anybody else drive it, and he kept it in immaculate condition, and he just loved this car. And then we have Bill Sterling, who was 29 years old, and he was Jack Madruga's best friend. They were inseparable in life and later on ended up being inseparable in death, sadly. We also have Ted Weir. He was dubbed the Gentle Giant, who was very trusting and a little bit gullible. Even at the age of 32, he was still that way. And we have Jackie Hewitt, who was the youngest of the group at 24 years old, and he relied heavily on his parents and especially his dad. Matter of fact, all of these boys still lived at home with their parents and relied on them in some form or another. But the boys were known to still go almost everywhere together. And on February 24th, 1978, that's exactly what they did. They all piled into the Mercury Montego and drove to California State, also known as Chico, to watch one of their favorite teams play a basketball game. And their team won that night. They were in great moods. They were celebrating. They were happy. And we know this because around 10 p.m., they stopped at Bear's country store and were getting a bunch of different snacks. Fruit pies, lemon pies, Snicker bars, Pepsi, chocolate milk, and the clerk was saying that they were laughing and they were happy. They were in great moods, and she was slightly annoyed because they came in like right when she was getting ready to close. And by judging from their, snack list, it sounds like they had the munchies to me. I mean, let's think about it. All these guys are like in their 20s, early 30s. It's the 70s. Their favorite team just won a game. They're driving home. They're probably listening to music and smoking some weed, and having a great time, eating all their snacks. And I think that they took a wrong turn because they went out of their way. Like, they passed their exit that they were supposed to get off to go to Yuba County, and instead went up a mountain into the Plumas National Forest. And they went 9 miles up this mountain until the road basically turned into a dirt road, a, very snowy dirt road. They were like over 4,000 feet in elevation. They were up so high and it was so snowy the further that they kept going up. I don't know if you guys have ever went up a mountain, but it drastically changes as you're going up. And they got to the snow line, which is where the plows stop. So basically, plows will plow a road until there's no need to plow it anymore. So they stop there. And this is where the boys ended up. All this way up a mountain. I think that they were high AF, having a great time, made a wrong turn, people do it all the time. You're just zoning out, you go the wrong way. And now they're going up a mountain, and back then it wasn't paved. It's narrow. It's snowy. It's dark already by then. By then it was like the sun was setting around like 5:45, 6 o'clock. So by the time the boys arrived, 9 miles up this mountain, it was already midnight. So it was way dark. It was like 20 degrees. Like I said, it was snowy up there, and their car gets stuck. And we know this because there were tracks in the snow, like they were trying to reverse really fast. But also on that same road, 40 to 50 feet right ahead of them, was the one and only eyewitness that saw the boys there, Joseph Schoen, in his Volkswagen Beetle, climbing a mountain in a Volkswagen Beetle. I don't know. I don't know what that's all about, but he was parked there, and according to Joseph Schoen, around midnight he was awoken because he had fallen asleep in his car with it running, he said, and the heat going. He was awoken by headlights coming up behind him, and Joseph said that he was having a heart attack and had been sleeping. Well, he's given different stories, so who knows what really happened, but according to him, he was having a heart attack. I don't know if he fell asleep or if he was laying or if he said he was laying in the back seat in pain, but he said that he saw headlights. He heard like whistling. He said he cracked his door and was yelling for help, and then he said the headlights went out and he didn't hear anything else. And later we find out that he was extremely drunk. He had defecated, pooped all around his car. He had thrown up all around his car. He probably was sick AF. Like I said, he said he had a heart attack. It was later confirmed at the hospital that he had angina, which is basically chest pains from exertion or stress or something like that. Not an actual heart attack. So who knows? Because Joseph also said he saw a red pickup truck behind the Montego, and then a woman and a baby and somebody else got out of the truck, and then there was between 2 and 12 people standing in the middle of the road. And then they all apparently got back into a pickup truck, which how would they all fit, for one? And for two, why would a woman even have her baby out in the middle of like the night like that? Even if they were on that road and they were traveling, why would she get out of the car with the baby and stand in the middle of the road to talk to the boys? Like, that still doesn't make sense regardless of what he says. And I think he was just drunk and hallucinating or just saying shit to throw out red herrings or something, because I don't trust Joseph Schoen at all. His stories don't line up. None of it makes sense. He told the police that he was there. He got stuck at 5:30, that he had driven up the mountain in his Volkswagen Beetle because he owns a cabin up there, which he doesn't. And he was checking the weather because his family was going to visit up there. And none of that was true. It's also known that Joseph Schoen used to sell weed back in the day and also liked to blab about it and got robbed before. So I wonder if he actually maybe had a little grow house or something up there, and maybe he was going up the mountain that night to check on his crop because he knew a storm was coming, because a winter storm hit like 2 days later. So maybe that's what he was doing. Who knows? Maybe he was just drunk and had to pass out, like had to pull over and passed out because he was known around town, to be the town drunk and to just pass out in his car, and people would just see it pulled over on the side of the road like it was a normal occurrence. He was also known to have a gun and to just randomly shoot it off into the air. So I don't trust Joseph Schoen. I don't even really know if he was there at 5:30 or not, but I guess it would make sense because he said he left the car running for the heat, which would have taken, if he had a full tank of gas, would have taken about 10 hours for it to run out, which would have made sense because by the time Joseph started walking back down the mountain, the 8 miles to a lodge, it was around 4 a.m. So he likely ran out of gas around 2 a.m. and then tried to stick it out and then couldn't anymore and then started making it down the mountain around 4. So that would mean if the boys pulled up around 12, then after he saw the headlights and stuff, he just passed back out, basically, is what I'm gathering from his statement. But that's not what I think actually happened. I don't think that at all. So Joseph goes down the mountain, doesn't tell anybody about the boys or the baby or the Montego or anything like that. But he gets a ride home from a couple and from the lodge, and he tells them that he got his car stuck because he was being tailgated so close that, he got stuck in the snow, I guess. That's what he told one person before he even talked to the cops. And a couple days go by and, the families are like frantically searching for the boys. They never came back home. They're freaking out because the boys would never miss their basketball game and they always came home, and they were supposed to come home that night. Their parents basically had their outfits, for the game tomorrow laying out. They were expected to come home. And because Joseph never told anybody about the Montego being just 40 or 50 feet from his stupid little Volkswagen Beetle, no offense to anybody that has one, they didn't find the Montego until 4 days later. And then once in between that time, within those 4 days, a major snowstorm hit on February 26th, and the snow drifts got to like 10 to 15 feet. It was so bad that when they went out to search for the boys, the snowcats couldn't even make it through anymore. They had to give up. They had to wait all the way until June just to be able to go and search for them. That's how bad this snowstorm was. So just imagine, like, you're frantically searching for your kids, and then you find the car that they were all in 9 miles up a mountain that had a crazy snowstorm blizzard, and you cannot find your kids anywhere. And some asshole didn't even tell anybody about it. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? Joseph, allegedly all of this happened, but yeah. And the cops never even questioned Joseph about his cabin. Like, what was the address? Where is it even located? Nothing. They just took his word for it and didn't press him any further about anything, which is crazy to me. Him being like the last person to see them and the only eyewitness on this freaking mountain, which, by the way, slightly ironic that they both ended up in the same exact place. I initially thought that maybe Joseph encountered the boys at that country store and had a little disagreement or something in the parking lot. Maybe Joseph was jealous because he was driving a little Volkswagen Beetle and these 5 rowdy boys were driving a big muscle car. Maybe he was talking smack, or maybe Gary was talking smack, or maybe they were all talking smack. If they're high and he's drunk, and who knows. But then I thought maybe Gary, told Jack, like, don't let him talk to us like that, blah, 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 get on his ass, let's follow him, blah, blah, blah. But then it doesn't make sense why they would have been going so slow up the mountain if this was some kind of chase, you know what I mean? And why they would have continued eating their snacks, because the wrappers were found on the floor of the Montego when the police found their car. So if you're in some kind of chase, you're not going to be just casually eating some pies, you know what I mean? But if you're lost because you're high and you're going up a winding mountain and there's no turnoff, so you just keep going hoping that you'll get to something, you may be casually eating, not casually, but you may be eating some pies and eating the Snicker bars and drinking all the Pepsi and all that stuff. But that's just one of my theories, because I can't think of any other reason other than them being high, or they got into it with Joseph Schoen at the market and then he led them up the mountain, and then maybe the road started getting too bad actually the further they got up the mountain, now that I think of it, because the further you go up a mountain, the weather completely changes. Like, it can go from no snow to all of a sudden there's a bunch of snow everywhere and it's currently snowing, foggy, whatever. So maybe if there was some kind of chase or whatever, maybe it started off as a chase, but the further they got, obviously they couldn't go any faster because they would slide off the road or they would mess up their cars. And we all know that Jack is not messing up his baby Montego, right? So then maybe they finally make it to where they can't go any further. They make it to the snow line, and maybe then Joseph is like, well, oh shit, there's nowhere for me to go. So he hops out his car with his gun in his hand and walks up to the window, and maybe the boys don't see it at first. So Jack rolls down his window, because we know that his window was rolled down, and he sees the gun and he's like, oh shit, he has a gun. He drops his lemon pie, and they all like bust out of the doors, the passenger side doors, and off into the woods they go, because maybe he's screaming and stuff for them and everything, because he told the cops he was having a heart attack and that he was yelling for help and screaming. And what if he said that just in case the boys were found, and they would have been like, well, he was threatening us, he had a gun or whatever, and he would have been like, no, I was having a heart attack, I was just trying to get help. Now that I think about it, that just came to me as I was saying this out loud, because wouldn't that make sense? Then I had a thought, like, maybe there was some kind of drug deal going on up there. Maybe there was, I don't know, back then, like, methamphetamine was big back then, especially with like motorcyclists and stuff. No shade to motorcyclists, but we do know that, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit right here, but we do know that motorcyclists are the ones who found the trailer with Ted's body still in it in June. Okay. So what if they were going up there to check their stuff? You know what I mean? Or check places to have their stuff, or maybe they had some shit hidden up there. You know what I mean? Thinking nobody's going to go up there. We don't know. But I just came up with that today. Like, there's so many rabbit holes I've jumped down and theories that I've tried to process through my head. It's crazy. I've watched all the seasons of Sons of Anarchy. Okay, I know about the small town in California, and not that that was real, but I'm just saying, the gun running and the drugs and all that. So what if something like that really was going on, was happening? Because why would Joseph be up there or driving up there right when the sun is about to set and it's about to be dark, unless he's going out there to watch the sunset by himself? Like, is that what you're doing, Joseph? I highly doubt it. So maybe he did have a little grow house or something. I don't know. Can you grow weed in a grow house in February? I don't know. In 1978? I don't know. I highly doubt they had equipment to do that. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Maybe he was going up there to just scout out a place. What other reason would he have to go up there unless he was just so drunk he just kept driving up the mountain and went, oh, it stops right here? Or he just went up there to do what? I don't know. To meet other drug people? Maybe those were the people in the red pickup truck, and then he accidentally let it slip to the cops, trying to throw him off his trail, and then was like, oh shit, they might come back and, I don't know, murk me, unalive me or something. Maybe they're the ones that ran up to the boys or not ran up, but like walked up to the boys as the boys pulled up. Because maybe, I don't, it's the snacks that make me feel like there was not a chase. You know, you're not going to just be eating snacks. You're just not going to be. And Jack's pie, the lemon pie, was half eaten. So they like put it down in a hurry, I'm assuming. Unless he was saving it for later. Maybe he was saving it for later. But that's not the way that I read it. Like, it was made to sound like he had like set it on the dashboard or on the seat or somewhere. He put it somewhere. And also they found a neatly folded map in the glove box. So if they were lost, they didn't check to see where they were or where they were going. You know, if they're high, maybe they're just like, man, where's the turnaround? I don't know. Keep going. It's too snowy. It's going to be too hard to back out. We got to keep going up, go up. I don't know. I can't answer those questions, and it drives me crazy. If I think about it long enough, I'll just poke holes in my own theory. So, okay, enough about Joseph Schoen. We might come back to him because there's so much about him, and I feel like the cops just like didn't do enough. Is his wife still alive? You know, does she know anything? There's also rumors that, you know, Joseph Schoen was like the town bully and stuff, and nobody really liked him. So I don't know. So let's talk about something that we do know, that in June, that is when snowcats and people were able to get up there, and motorcyclists were able to get up there and find the bodies of 4 of the boys, because Gary Mathias is currently, to this day, still missing. None of his stuff was found. Not the leather boots that he was wearing of Ted's, which I'll get to that in a second. No clothing, no nothing. He just vanished without a trace, which I'm sure that he's there somewhere, buried way, way, way deep down. So the first bodies they find, I believe, were the bodies of Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga. Now, Jack Madruga was the driver of the car, and Bill Sterling, like I said, was his best friend. And they were found about 11 and a half miles from the car going up the mountain. And they were found on like opposite sides of the road, which I'm assuming are the snow tracks from the snowcat that had went up there the day prior, is what I'm assuming that they meant by the road. I think it's just tracks from a big snowcat. But anyways, their bodies were found next to each other. So the autopsy showed that they had died of hypothermia, and I'm guessing that since they were best friends, that one of them sat down, unable to go any further. You know, sleep really starts to take over your body when hypothermia sets in. So they just couldn't go any further, and then the other one just decided to stay with them and sit down. I'm sure they were plenty tired by then as well, so it may have just been like, you know, fuck it, basically, fuck it. Because can you imagine how cold it was? It was 20 degrees. They were not dressed for the winter. They had on like jeans and a shirt and maybe a light jacket. Maybe. I think some of them did not even have a jacket on. And it's 20 degrees. And they're trudging through snow in the dark. So, I mean, hypothermia, it only takes hours to set in, and you can be dead in a night. So it's most likely that Jack and Bill died the first night trying to find, you know, some sign of life somewhere, a town, a something, a campground, something. They were trying to find shelter or something. And I'm sure they kept following the snow tracks of the snowcat, because what else were they going to do? Like, they were probably thinking, like, these have to lead somewhere, right? They have to go somewhere. Somebody was driving up here, and it was better than veering off, you know, off track and then being completely lost in the woods, because I'm sure they were disoriented by then. You can't really tell if you're going uphill, downhill. It could have been a slow grade. You know what I mean? They're freezing to death, literally freezing to death. So they make it the 11 and a half miles away from the car, and then Jackie, his body, Jackie Hewitt, which he's also Jack, but I think they called him Jackie because it was like two Jacks, so it's just easier to call one of them Jackie. And I think his dad called him Jackie, but his dad is actually the one that found his remains, not his body, because by then, like, animals had gotten to it, the elements had gotten to it. I mean, it had been months since they had went missing. But I guess his dad found his jacket and picked up his son's jacket, and his spine fell out of it. Like, can you even imagine? You see your kid's jacket and you run to it and you pick it up and their spine falls out of it. Like, how horrible is that? How horrible would that have been for that poor father who is probably traumatized forever, or was traumatized forever? I'm sure he's passed away by now, which is another sad thing. Like, pass away without ever really knowing what happened. Why did the boys get out of the car that night? You know, what scared them that badly that his son basically ran into the woods in the middle of the night and left the safety of a warm car? Like, even if it was stuck, it still had gas. It was still running, you know. Unless they thought like because they only had like quarter of a tank. Unless they thought like we only have a quarter of a tank, we need to do something. We need to find something. But if that were the case, then why not go back down the mountain? They had to have passed that mountain lodge at the bottom if they were going up. Why wouldn't they have went back down the mountain? Unless something was blocking them from doing so, which further proves my theory. If they like pulled up on a drug thing, then maybe they were surrounded, you know? Maybe it was more than one person. Maybe it wasn't just Joseph Shones. Or maybe Joseph Shones woke up paranoid, thinking he was about to get robbed again, you know, like I said. And he was trying to just scare them off. He saw 5 big guys, you know, he's drunk, sick, pooping, throwing up, you know? So I don't know. None of it makes sense. That doesn't make sense. Okay, so back to the boys and where they were found. So poor Jackie's dad finds his stuff, and then motorcyclists, like I said, were the ones that actually found Ted Weir and, well, they just found Ted Weir, okay? Because like I said, Gary Mathias is still missing. So 19 miles away from the car, uphill, in June, motorcyclists are out doing who knows what, Sons of Anarchy. They go up to the service trailer, and they see that one of the windows is broken. So they go over to the service trailer and they smell something horrendous coming from the inside. So they get into the inside and they discover Ted's body wrapped in like 8 sheets, you know, completely wrapped up. Now, I've heard conflicting stories on whether his head was wrapped. I've heard stories like he was wrapped as I should say I've heard accounts. He was wrapped up like a mummy, and then other ones like he was just tucked in very securely with like hospital corner beds, which is also why people think that Gary was with him up there, because Gary, like I said, used to be in the army, so he would do those tucks, you know, the hospital tucks, the really neat corners. And there were food rations and stuff that they had found, but only 34 cans were eaten. So I don't know if those were the only 34 cans or so, and I could be wrong, but this is what I read, and this is all public information. You guys can pull this yourselves as well. So it was like 34 cans. I don't know if those were the only 34 cans in the trailer that they had broken into or not. Well, yeah, I guess broken into, but not like maliciously, because it said that there was a whole other like locker full of rations outside, like a whole year's worth that could have fed the 5 guys for a year, and it wasn't open. Like the cabinet wasn't opened, and I guess there was like propane tanks and stuff like that, so they could have had heat, but none of that was turned on. But we don't know if they knew how to do that stuff, or if they were even able to check, because 2 days later, a big, huge snowstorm hit. And I checked the weather and stuff for around that time and how bad like the blizzard was and stuff. And some of the snow drifts got up to like 10 to 15 feet. I mean, you have to take into account it was so bad that the actual snowcats that are made for that could only search for so long before they had to give up back in February when the search first started, right? Like they couldn't even they couldn't even continue with the search. So that's how bad it was. So who knows if they could even get out of the trailer at first, you know what I mean? Or what if the locker that had the food in it was buried? Or what if the propane tank was buried, you know? But there was all this snow. We don't know where any of this stuff was. If anything, I think that Gary Mathias and Ted Weir both made it to the trailer. They broke in, and Ted's feet were so frostbitten that he had lost toes and everything by the time he was found and stuff. So he had to have been in a lot of pain, a lot of pain. So his feet were probably already frostbitten on the way up there. So I'm sure Gary helped him a lot of the way up there, and also probably, you know, got him his food and helped him eat and everything. So that part to me is so sad because a lot of people blame Gary and say that he had some kind of psychotic break and led the boys into the woods and all this other crap. But I don't believe that, and I don't think that that's even fair to Gary. Like, how is that fair to him? Here's another reason why we know that Gary was in the trailer. His shoes were there. So he had like Converse tennis shoes on, and Ted was wearing like leather boots. So Ted was found with no boots on, like no shoes on or anything. But like I said, he was wrapped up in like 8 blankets, and Gary's shoes were sitting like on the floor. So authorities assumed that Gary took Ted's boots because either Ted had, well, I don't think he had passed away by then, but some think that maybe he had already passed away by then. Well, if you wrapped him up like a mummy with his head covered, I freaking hope he had passed away by then. But if that's the case, we'll do both. Okay, so first we'll go with this one, that he was already passed away, and Gary took his boots to then trudge out into the snow because they're better than his Converse, right? Or Ted was getting worse and worse and worse. They were running out of food. They were rationing the 34 cans as best as they could. And, you know, maybe Gary was like, bro, I gotta go. If I don't go and try to get help, you're going to die. You know, I gotta go and try to find us help. At least I gotta try. And he took his boots and left the cabin or the trailer trying to find help, because searchers also found blankets and a flashlight just a quarter mile from the trailer. So I'm assuming Gary had, you know, wrapped himself in a couple blankets and a flashlight and was trying to go out and find help. But did he only make it a quarter mile and then he died? He sat down because he couldn't go, or did like the flashlight die, or was it too cold to hold in his hands because he didn't have gloves and he just dropped it? Or why would he have a flashlight anyway? Well, I guess because he would take it, you know, because who knows how long he's going to be in the wilderness. But I highly doubt he left during the night and he only made it a quarter mile. So, or maybe the blanket got too heavy by then. Maybe it was dragging in the snow. It was probably a wool blanket if it's at like a ranger service station, you know. So maybe it got too heavy and he just dropped it or shed it, or maybe he was hypothermic and they have this thing called paradoxical undressing, that when you're hypothermy, I'm not even editing this out because I don't edit, but when you're hypothermic, your nerve endings basically make you feel like you're on fire. So some people take their clothes off and strip. So maybe he like shed the blanket or something. I don't know. Because that's all that they found. They never found him. We have never found Gary Mathias. To this day, he's still missing. Nobody knows what happened to him. But I'm assuming that he just passed away like the other ones and he was trying to get help. And people think that like I said, he had some kind of psychotic break, but I don't believe that. He was on medication. He was doing fine. And they also found like written affirmations or carved affirmations. I think written. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But they found that in the trailer. And his family was saying that he would write positive affirmations when he was starting to have an episode. So maybe a couple weeks to a month in, you know, he started to have episodes, because the coroner said that Ted could have lived anywhere between 8 to 13 weeks. And he knows this because Ted on that day had a clean face, no beard, no facial hair or anything. And when he was found, he had a full beard. And the coroner even measured, the beard hair to see how long it would have taken to grow that length if you didn't have any facial hair or anything. And he had lost 100+ pounds by the time that his body was found. I guess he was over 200 pounds initially, and then was less than 100 or right around 100 pounds or so when they found his body. So either he couldn't feed himself any longer if he was in too much pain. His toes are falling off. I mean, you're not in the greatest physical state or mental state, and either there was no more food in the cabin and he slowly starved to death that way, or he couldn't open it and he slowly starved to death that way. Either way, he starved to death and died of hypothermia. So can you imagine how horrible that would be to slowly die like that? Unless Gary left only after like a few days or like a week, and he had opened all those cans for Ted to eat, at least while he was gone, and then he ran out of food and slowly starved to death. And your body basically starts eating itself when that happens, just so you know. It's like a very, very painful way to die. And that is so freaking sad. You make it all the way to that trailer, 19 miles. I wouldn't have made it 19 minutes. It took them 10 to 15 hours just to get to that trailer, roughly, trekking through the snow, even through the bobcat or the snowcat tracks. It would have taken them until the next afternoon, probably, which the sun coming up and that warmth from the sun and the light is probably the only reason that they were able to push on, you know what I mean? Those two. And like I said, Jackie's body was found 1.5 to 2 miles away from the trailer. He was almost there. So the three of them, after Jack and Bill passed away, miles back, they probably were the three of them together, and then Jackie couldn't go on anymore. And, Gary kept pushing him and Ted up the mountain, the snow tracks, they got to go somewhere. They have to lead to somewhere. We have to stay on this track. We have to, I can just picture them saying that or thinking that. And it's so sad because the trailer was so far away. 19 miles is so far away. I really don't know how they made it. But they did. And then they just never made it back out. And that's so sad. And freaking Joseph Schoen, I don't know. He knows something. Well, he knew something. Allegedly. Everything I say in this video is alleged. He has passed away, but you never know. He knows something. Either he scared the boys into the woods, or he knows who did. Something happened on that road that night, and somebody knows what happened. And eventually I hope that it comes out, and that the boys can finally be at peace. I hope they already are at peace, actually. I hope that they already are. I hope that it wasn't anything nefarious from Gary or anything like that. I really don't think so. Oh, and here's something else. Newly released police evidence as of 2023. They released some evidence and found a note that somebody from the police force had written in Gary's missing persons file back in 2020, saying that they suspected Gary was the victim of foul play, but not to tell his family. What? What do you mean, don't tell his family? So just let everybody think that Gary is the one that did it. Just let everybody think that he just killed his friends, or just led them into the woods for no reason. I don't know for sure what led them up the mountain, if it was just a wrong turn. I really believe that it was just a wrong turn. I really think that they may have been, like I said, high or something, or just made a wrong turn and then couldn't find any turnoff spots, or it was too hard to turn around and they just kept going. He didn't want to mess up his car, or who knows? One thing that I do know is that those boys were tough and strong AF to make it as far as they did in the freezing cold in the middle of the night. They were warriors, and I'm so sorry that they had to lose their life. And this case has fucked with my head so bad ever since I found out about it. Like, I've been thinking about nothing else except what happened to them. Why did the Yuba County Five boys run into the woods in the middle of the night, seemingly for no reason? None that we know anyway. None that Joseph is going to tell us anyway. You know? Why was Joseph up there? Was he just super drunk at the lodge and made a wrong turn up the mountain? Or he just wanted to just go up the mountain, and by the time he got up there, he was like, oh shit, it's dark. I'm just going to fall asleep. I don't know, because like I said about the gas, they said that his car was out of gas when they went to go get it. It was out of gas, and it was stuck too. So even if the boys wanted to go around him, they probably couldn't have, because his car was stuck. But also they were at the snow line. They couldn't go any further. So it's just a horrendous, horrendous mystery. And I'm not for sure what happened. I have my theories. I told you guys what I thought that they were. And because I can't make sense of it any other way. I don't think it was aliens or ghosts or anything like that that goes around. Nothing supernatural. No, nothing. Joseph was there. He's a human, or he was a human. He's nothing supernatural. He's just a fucking liar. Allegedly. And this is all, like I said, alleged. But let me know what you guys think. I'm sure if I started thinking more, I could come up with a whole other episode. Or a whole other thing about this. A whole other rabbit hole that I jumped down. Like the boys, like I said, they had a game that they were playing in the next day for the Gators. Like there was a handwritten note one of them had written of the date and the time and everything of the game. Like they loved basketball. They weren't going to miss that game. There was no reason for them to go up the mountain. Like it was already after 10 o'clock at night, They had a game in the morning. They're not going to detour to go have fun or go smoke some weed up a mountain. Because I guess like people used to go and do that up there, but I highly doubt that they were like, oh, let's go up the mountain and smoke some weed. No, I'm telling you, they just went the wrong way. And it was dark. There's, I'm sure, no lampposts up there. I'm sure there's no light up there at all. They couldn't see nothing. I can see how that would happen. Even if they weren't high, Maybe they were just goofing off in great moods and took a wrong turn. I can be on the phone with my daughter, not that they had phones back then or anything, but I can be on the phone with my daughter and we're just talking and she makes a wrong turn and gets on the highway or misses her exit and has to go way far down the way because she was distracted. It happens. If there's a car full of 5 guys, they just won their game, they just bought a bunch of snacks, The radio's probably going, they're laughing, having a great fucking time. Maybe they went off the wrong way. You never know. If any locals watch this and you have any info on Joseph Schoen and if he had blabbed around town about anything because, he blabbed about his weed operation. Who knows if he wouldn't blab about this. Actually, I heard that somebody did blab in a church and confess about being the one to kill the boys or do something to the boys, but I don't know how true that is, seeing as how they were all killed by the elements, unless he meant just having a hand in their death by making them flee into the woods. It's just sad, and I'm just so sad for the families and people that have researched this case and fell down the rabbit hole like I have. Like, I feel bad for all of us because it's sad. But if you guys have made it this far, please like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. It really helps me grow. Let me know what you guys think in the comments too. Let me know what you think because I need help. I need help figuring it out. It's driving me crazy. All right, guys. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.